very challenging. And also, before he does so, I would like to wish him a happy birthday. Thank you, Avi.
Thank you, Albert. It's, I used to celebrate my birthday for 35 years by myself, December 14. And then in December 14, 1987, Sheikh Yassin, Allah yarhamu, decided that that's the date of the establishment of Hamas. So can you imagine what does it mean to celebrate your birthday together with Hamas? And some people who call me to congratulate me on my birthday, I said, well, I'm glad that you remember the date. So say, yeah, we remember that it's the date of Hamas. So I was first, anyway. I just want to start from the future. I know it sounds a little bit odd to start from the future, but let's imagine that Iran launched a full nuclear experiment. And the Iranian leader, in his speech to the people, says, from now on, we are not anymore a threshold state, but we are a superpower with nuclear weapon. Of course, the threats expressed by the Iranian leaders towards Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other countries will get a much more severe meaning. And in addition to that, Iran announces that from now on, not even 1 barrel of oil will be shipped through the Hormuz Straits unless Iran will be allowed to ship all capacity it wants to ship through the Hormuz Straits. Such a statement means 18 million barrels a day are going to be missing from the global market. Just to get in proportion, the United States is using every day 18 million barrels. They don't need the Saudis or Gulf countries' oil. But just to put in proportion, 18 million barrels are going to be out of the market as long as Iran decides and determined it's going to block the Hormuz Straits. So welcome to the new Middle East. But meanwhile, let's fasten your safety belts, and we are going to climb up to the satellite to see the relevant Middle East today. I know that 40 years ago, of course, if you want to see Israel's Middle East, you could take just a plane to take off and to see the neighboring countries, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt. But this millennium, the Middle East is much larger than used to be 40 years ago. It's a different Middle East. You have countries that are threatening the state of Israel and other countries, like, in addition to Lebanon, due to Hezbollah in the north, you have Iran and Iraq in the east. You have Yemen due to the Houthis in the south. You have, of course, Gaza Strip due to Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the west, but it's just across the street. And I'm not sure that that's the whole list to the coming few months or years. But of course, you have to see also the countries who create some kind of opportunities, new opportunities that never happened before. Try to imagine, Tony Abbott, you mentioned the direct flights from Australia to Israel. Try to imagine that the flights used to go all around, and suddenly a year ago, Saudi Arabia, more than a year, allowed, meanwhile, only Air India flights to fly to Tel Aviv and from Tel Aviv above Saudi Arabia. It cuts 2 hours, a lot of fuel. It cuts the prices of tickets. And I hope that after Air India, it will be followed by other carriers, and hopefully one day even by Israeli carriers. Never happened for 69 years of established, since this Israel was established. Of course, you can see and find many Israelis who are going to Gulf countries, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Oman, even the Prime Minister went there. Qatar for business. You can hear Hebrew. You can see Israeli passports. You don't have to fly only in case you have another passport. That's, of course, something that encourages us. But I think above all, about a year and a half ago, 19 Arab countries, amongst the 22 Arab countries, stated Hezbollah as a terror organization. 19 out of 22, the three who didn't do it, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, and I shall come in a minute to talk about them. So what happened 40 years ago that forces us to go up to see the Middle East from the height of the satellite? Many good things happened, some bad things happened, and some good things who were a cause for bad things that followed it. First good, as Israelis, we always start with the good ones. 1979, we've started to implement the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. Egypt was the first Arab country that we have signed a peace treaty with, and let alone the biggest Arab country in population, and the strongest military country that we have fought against several times. So to put out of the circle of wars such a country like Egypt, it's a strategic achievement. Bad things, as I said, follow the good ones. In 1979, just a short time after we started to implement the Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty, the revolution in Iran occurred. Khomeini came in, and the revolution brought up the radical Shiite Islamists in Iran, non-Arabs but Muslims. We all remember the siege of the American embassy, etc. Just a few weeks later, I'm not sure many people remember it, just a few weeks later, while in the Kaaba in Mecca, the most holy place for Islam, 100,000 people came to pray. When 500 terrorists took out rifles and weapons from coffins of kids that are brought in to a funeral into the holy site, and took hostages 100,000 Muslims who came to pray. I don't remember 500 terrorists in any terror attack, not even in Russia at the famous theater or Beslan, at the school over there. It took 2 weeks, up until the Sudanese military broke in and released the hostages. Not before 250 people got killed and many hundreds got injured. The terrorists were Muslim Brotherhood. So to those who are surprised about the links and connections and ties between how can it happen that Iran, who is Shiite and non-Arab, is so strongly connected with Muslims, Sunnis and Arabs, or with Shiites who are Arabs like Hezbollah in Lebanon, or the Shiites in Yemen, or Sunnis like Islamic Jihad, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or Hamas, who was officially Muslim Brotherhood? The answer is, of course, 40 years ago. And I think that you look at meeting of interests. So the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, they simply hate what they call the corrupt regime in Saudi Arabia. The Shiite Iranians, they simply hate the Sunnis regime in Saudi Arabia, who is running and ruling the most holy place for Islam, Mecca. There were only 2 years, interesting, between 2011 to 13, when the Muslim Brotherhood took over Egypt under Mohammed Morsi at the military coup, or the revolution as a matter of fact. And for those 2 years, they forces Hamas to cut all ties with Iran. after 10 years since established. But afterwards, when Abdel Fattah Sisi came into power in Egypt, Hamas right away reconnected the ties with Iran because they need two things, money and weapon. Until today, these connections are flowing, in addition, of course, to the connection between Islamic Jihad that never been cut. No doubt, Iran is the state of terror, the biggest state of terror in the world, the leading state of terror in the world. And in addition to the project, the nuclear weapon project, that is continues to be built by Iran, never even one case when Iran was participating in the discussions with the official organizations about nuclear energy, not even one case Iran brought to the table something that it was new on their initiative. It's always they had to be confronted and surprised by the other countries, part of them Israel indirectly, who brought information about sites, and mainly after the archive was taken from Tehran by the Mossad in a brilliant operation. And till today, Iran has to give very complicated answers to what really is going on in Iran in connection with the nuclear project. I don't want to elaborate on it because I know they're going to discuss it later on. But Iran, parallel to that, is continue to build the subcontractors for terror. In the northern corridor, of course, the Shiite militia in Iraq, the Shiite militia in Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Hezbollah in Syria, and the southern corridor, Yemen, the Houthis in Yemen, and the test case was Saudi Arabia, remember 9/14. I know we are all built to remember 9/11, which is a tragedy by itself. But 9/14, 2019, is a very significant date. At this day, Iran launched 10 cruise missiles towards Saudi Arabia, to the refineries of Aramco. In addition to that, 20 UAVs, the cruise missiles with warheads of about 100 kilogram each one, explosives, and the UAVs with about 20 kilogram explosives, and it destroyed the refineries, and it blocked 50% of the capacity of oil produced by Saudi Arabia at that time. Within minutes, Saudi Arabia understood what does it mean to be attacked by Iran. I think that in the future history, this date will be remembered as one of the most significant dates that Iran strengthened its deterrence towards Saudi Arabia, towards other Arab countries. The fact that the Iranians and the Saudis have learned that the United States are not going to respond as long as Americans are not going to be hurt in an attack launched by Iran. That's a very significant lesson for all of us, even for Israel. Although we have never asked in our history, we have never asked any other country, neither the United States nor any other country, to fight our wars. I know that to say it in front of people from Australia and England, it's a bit complicated because you, both countries, you practically liberated the state of Israel, or the area, the Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, at the First World War from the Ottoman Empire. And we do remember it. We were not at that time the state of Israel. I remember, and if I may add something, I remember when I was head of Shin Bet, I was asked by Liza Munningham, former head of the MI5, to send someone to brief a conference of interrogation of terror in London. It was Attorney General Office, Scotland Yard, and MI5. So I sent someone from the head of the interrogation center, and he went there, and she told me later on that after a good briefing, started Q&As, and someone asked her, but according to what law you are questioning with terrorists? He said, according to the 45th command. So I said, what do you mean 45th command? It's our command, the British commands. So yeah, that's, you are still keeping the British commands? We said, yeah, we don't have anything better than that. So why do you keep it? He did not want to answer. He said, in case you are going to be back. But I think that, this event of 9/14 is challenging us as the State of Israel to build capabilities, offensive and defensive, against Iran in Syria and Iraq, against Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria, against Hamas and Jihad Islami in Gaza Strip, and maybe against some other fronts that I don't know when it's going to surprise us. In any case, when we speak about Gaza Strip, it's a different story. It's a unique story. Gaza is 70 kilometers from the heart of Tel Aviv, from Ben Gurion Airport, the main international airport in Israel that 99% of people are living and coming to Israel through this airport. It's a story that cannot continue as it happened over the last years. It's 40,000 terrorists equipped with military weapons, sponsored, guided, supplied with more and more accurate weapon. I mean, trying to make the rockets missiles. Same as it happens in Lebanon, it happens in Gaza. And the strategy in Gaza is to create a war of attrition against Israel. It's not just the rockets, it's the sirens. When you have sirens 7 times a day in one city, try to imagine that people have to run to a shelter. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, depends what city is it or what village is it. In my eyes, the only way that it's going to be one day ended or brought to an end is by launching what we call a former defensive fleet operation, as we've done in the West Bank. It's different, I guess, compared to the West Bank, but that's not going to last neither weeks or months. It's a long story. We have to be well prepared for it. At the end of it, we shall have Israelis not as hostages to Hamas and PG in Gaza Strip. Many terrorists will be killed. Many others will be arrested, like it happened in the defensive field operation. 8,000 terrorists who are putting in jail, questioned with, give you and feed you with information you can never get from any other tools. We don't have any tools to get information from dead people. If you have in England or Australia, which you'll be interested in. But we know how to bring information from live people. And I think that we do understand it's a matter of time. And then, probably the Palestinian Authority will get back to the Gaza Strip. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, Gazans will go to work in Israel. The economy of Gaza, same as the economy of the West Bank, is connected till today, 25 years after the establishment of the Palestinian Authority. It's connected with Israel, neither with Jordan nor with Egypt. The official currency in both Gaza Strip and the West Bank, Gaza under Hamas, is still having the shekel, the Israeli money, because they know the connection, the economic connection with Israel is so strong they cannot cut it. So I believe that the rationale of terrorist leaders in investing the money, whether it's a country like Iran or a terror organization like Hezbollah or Hamas, is first terror. All the other comes second and third. If you take just the data that you can get from the official sites, at the last 40 years, Iran did the smallest jump in its economy, in its GDP. Only 10%. Even Australia and England, 17 or 18%. Israel did 79%. Turkey, 19%. Even Egypt, 32%. If you analyze all the other data, GDP per capita, you can see that Iran is low behind, $5,000 and $600 per capita, while Australia is 57,000 and more. England is 43 almost. Israel is almost $42,000 per capita. And you get Iran 5,300, you understand, 600, you understand the difference. Iran is sponsoring Hezbollah up until 2 years ago with $1 billion a year. Sponsoring a terror organization, a pure terror organization. They cut it due to the sanctions to 600 million, which is less, but it's still a lot of money. So I think that when we are trying to learn about what's going to happen between us and the Palestinians, that's going to conclude my talk. I know that we are, over the 10 years, we discussed quite a lot about the Israeli-Palestinian Authority relations. I was there since 1994 when the Palestinian Authority was established. I remember Yasser Arafat and I remember Mahmoud Abbas today. Both leaders, the main reason why Oslo Accord failed is 100% on the Palestinian shoulders responsibility. I'm telling you, it's not, as people love to say, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. In average, if we are 50%, they are 50%. I totally reject it. I hate the average. Because the average, when your head is in the stove and your legs are in the freezer, in average, at the belly bottom, you feel well. Practically, you are dead. So I'm telling you, as someone who was there, if we are not going to get different leaders that understand that fighting terrorists doesn't mean that parallel to try to fight them, you pay them salaries, listen to that, $400 million. $400 million per year. By a Palestinian law, they pay salaries to terrorists, either Israeli jail or those terrorists who got killed due to a suicide bombing, that they killed Israelis during this bomb. Their families get salaries, monthly salaries. I'm telling you, in my experience, that's something that encouraged terror rather than creating a threat to terrorists. But we have time. We've decided that time lies on the side that knows how to take use of it. Unlike Palestinians say, time is on our side. We in Israel, we increased the number of Israelis who live in Jerusalem beyond 67 line. Today it's more than 250,000 Israelis live over and beyond 67 line in Jerusalem. We have an Israeli authorized settlements in the West Bank, close to 500,000 people. Nobody in Israel, never mind what party you are talking to, except maybe the leftist parties, the Arab party and maybe another leftist party. All Israelis understand Jordan Valley will be the eastern border of Israel, mainly when we are watching what's going on with Iran and the two corridors that already built, and nobody knows what kind of continuation it's going to have. We have in this corridor very few countries who still are independent, but as I said, threatened by Iran. We are sure, as Israelis, we are sure that time lies on the side who decides to make all efforts to build the country and not to wait up until other leaders from other countries will understand that Israel is not going to disappear from this region. In contrary, we are going to strengthen ourselves, to strengthen our economy, and to make sure that, as we say, the state of Israel, or as Bougie mentioned before, it's the nation state for the Jewish people, and those who are not sure about it, we passed a basic law. We don't have a constitution like England, I mean, like England, that doesn't have a constitution as well. We took some good things from England, and we don't have a constitution, but we have basic laws. And this basic law, I had the privilege and the honor to promote it. Israel, the nation state for Jewish people, it's a basic law that already passed in the Knesset with 62 votes, and it will be green light for the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Avi, for this tour of the region, the history,